Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Victory Podcast. My name is Chris Haddad alongside my co-host Steve McGrath. And on this episode, we have former NFL kicker John Potter. And for those who don't know John Potter, I'm going to give you his hefty resume here. Former graduate of Western Michigan University. When he left, he was the all-time leader in points with 333 points, 129 consecutive PATs. This stat, which is extremely interesting, he holds a MAC record for tackles by a kicker with 36. And most impressive, he graduated summa cum laude. Adding on to his NFL career, he was drafted 7th round by the Buffalo Bills, picked 251. He's played for the Redskins, Lions, Dolphins. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me, Chris. Thanks, Steve.
Good thing I didn't hold my breath there. I would have been going on forever.
Right.
So, John, thanks for coming on. Incredible story with, you've lived every kid's dream who's ever stepped on a football field of getting drafted, getting to play an NFL game. As Steve mentioned before the show, like you are on the stat sheet of an NFL. Like that's something that not a lot of people can say. You're ingrained in the NFL forever. I want to kick off this show. Just take us through the journey. When did you know that NFL was in the future of what you were trying to do? Was it in high school where a lot of scouts came to you and said, hey, you can kick at the next level? Or take me through that process of when you kind of knew the light bulb was on for the NFL.
Yeah, I would say it was about second grade. playing football with my friends. At that point, I was like, I could not have a real job ever in my life. I just want to travel the country, get paid for doing this. And magically, somehow it happened. But it's really been it's interesting because it is almost every kid's dream who plays sports to be a professional athlete someday. And for me, somehow it happened, but through kind of this strange and unexpected way. As a kid, obviously, most kids aren't thinking, I want to be a professional kicker. It's usually, I want to be the quarterback, I want to be a running back, I want to be a wide receiver. So it wasn't until my freshman year in high school that I actually started down the path of kicking. And that just comes from a little bit from my soccer background. But how I specifically got into it is through a kicker tryout my freshman year. They just had people line up balls across the side of the field. Everyone was kicking them across. It was going to the half line across. It was going maybe 3/4 across. I step up there not knowing what's going to happen, run to ball, kick it. And to my surprise, it flies across the field into the woods on the other side of the field. Wow. And at that point, all the coaches look at me and are like, okay, you're a kicker. and so from that point on, it's just been this interesting path that's taken me through college, earned me a scholarship, took me into the NFL. And it's been really an amazing and a lot of very lucky journey.
So can you talk a little bit about the scholarship part of it? So when you're in high school, you're doing well, school started approaching you. Were they finding you through camps? I got a lot of kids that approach me, ask me about camps. And I know when you were starting a website roughly about 1.5 years, 2 years ago about helping people find camps. Is that kind of how you got it, your name out there? Or was it people coming to just find you, or like take me through that process?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. You definitely, when you're just playing, your college or your high school games. Local colleges may or may not see you depending on how big your school is. It helps to have some of the bigger name recruits. If you're like me, if you're a kicker, if you're a smaller name recruit, it's good to have. Sometimes you get lucky and they'll come and they'll be recruiting another player and see you playing. But to really expand to really get schools outside of your local area to see you, you do need to kind of move yourself around. At least that's what it was for kickers. I'm not sure what it is for other positions these days, but I would imagine it's similar. It's definitely super competitive. So as a kicker, if you really want to really magnify your chances of getting found or getting recruited, you need to go to camps, and quite a few. But obviously the quality of those camps change a lot. Some are great. Some say that they'll get you a scholarship and don't really have the connections to. So it's something where you really do need to do your research to make sure that when you're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars, or your parents are spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars it's worth your while, and you'll actually be there. And the coaches who are there have those connections to get you the scholarship if you have the skills.
Yeah. And just one last question. I'll let Steve jump in. What advice would you give to younger kids that are like, how do you sift through those camps? Is it a location thing? Is it what NFL guys they have there? Is there a certain criteria, or it's just kind of looking at reviews from what the years past has done? Do you have any criteria of what, would help out kids looking for those camps?
Yeah, I would look at, there are a few different types of camps. One are camps where you're just there to get better. And the camp, those are super important because the scholarship camps don't matter until you actually have the skills. So I wouldn't waste your money on the scholarship camps until you are actually at that point where your skills are there to put you in the top 10% of the players there. So the camps that you're going to get better at, those camps, look for ones that have a good coach to athlete ratio. And that's super important because you get the most one-on-one attention. And then once you're ready to go to the scholarship camps, like I mentioned, one, make sure that you actually have the talent. Hopefully you have, from the other camps you've been to, you have a picture of your competition, how you stack up. But then, yeah, look at who have they placed previously? Have there been kids that have been to that camp and made it and got offers? I think that's a really big one. So some camps, I don't know if they changed the rules or not, but if there are college coaches there, that's huge. I know when I was playing, there were some camps where college coaches could be there, some where there weren't. But if you can get a college coach to actually see you kick, that is huge. So the senior camps, that helps out a lot as well.
Got it. So, John, I have to ask, 36 tackles as a kicker in college. At what point did you have to make the transition to just being a kicker? Were you allowed in high school to play other positions as well? Was it? Could you just walk me through what the actual transformation was to athlete to now you're just put in a position where you can only kick and you still use that to show your athleticism anyway?
Yeah. My dream was never to be a kicker. I grew up in Michigan. Was a fan of the Lions, and basically the best player for 20 years was Jason Hansen. So I had a kicker idol, but I didn't necessarily want to be a professional kicker. In high school, I wanted to play, I wanted to score touchdowns. That's what I would daydream about, scoring touchdowns, making interceptions, scoring touchdowns. And so I played free safety, I played wide receiver. So kicker throughout high school is almost like my side gig that I happen to be pretty good at. So it wasn't until I got a scholarship to play kicker in college that my focus went to just kicking. And that was a really, really interesting transition because it's challenging mentally to go from high school where you're on the field, you're playing wide receiver, you're running around, you're in the game, you're in the action, and then all of a sudden it's like field goal, you're already out there, you go kick the field goal, you go off. To college where when your only role is the kicker, 99% of the game is sitting on the sideline, which is it sounds really, really easy, but it's really mentally draining because you have to stay focused that entire time. And the only time you go on is for maybe 20 seconds you're on the field, but the actual kick itself takes 1.3 seconds snap to kick. So it's such a short period of time that it takes this stress that once was spread out across an entire game to these little increments of stress, which almost to me made it more difficult to really to get through game after game.
That's interesting because I want to talk about the stress about it in a little bit, but it's, to your point, when you're playing, everyone always has, they'll lie to you if they say they don't. They have the butterflies before the game where, you're getting amped up, and then you go on kickoff, or if you're a wide receiver or linebacker and you hit someone, it's gone, right? And you're like, okay, now I'm ready to go. So I can't imagine being on an NFL sideline, game on the line or whatever, maybe in Western Michigan, game on the line, ready to go. Can you walk me through, let's talk about college, your biggest kick in college and, the feelings before it, being a kicker, walking onto the field. Are you thinking, okay, I met with a sports psychologist once, I'll never forget. He said, never put the negative thought in your mind because that's all you'll think about. So if you're
Yeah.
sitting there, like when you're golfing or even kicking field goals, or if you think don't miss, the thought of not missing is in your head, right? So,
Yeah.
if you're running a marathon, whatever it is, it's keep going, or put it through the uprights. And now you're thinking of the successful goal at the end. Is that kind of how your mind worked, or you have a different approach?
It's not how my brain worked initially. It was definitely a learning process. And as you get higher and higher levels, people's physical ability gets closer and closer, and it's really the mental ability that helps you stand out. So that's what I had to learn to really progress through my career in college. I didn't start out as a great kicker. In college, I missed quite a few of my first field goals. But it's getting through those like really, really hard times that helps you become stronger mentally, and realizing how important it is to, after those misses, come back and, as you say, remain positive. It's a lot of visualization. So instead of even thinking about words, you're just seeing the ball go through the middle of the upright, and that's all you're thinking about. You're seeing the action, the actual kick when you're on the sideline, see it go through the upright, and then feel that feeling after it goes through. Even though it didn't happen, it's all happening in your brain, so it's getting your body in the right state to go then out on the field and make the field goal.
So, wow, that's pretty interesting. So would you say that, how important was that for you? Because if you went from missing some of your first few kicks to setting all these records, I mean, you really went from being a little shaky to literally the best the school has ever seen. So how much was it mental, and how much of it was just actually going through the drills and kicking? Was it, if you were to put like a percentage on it?
Yeah, I think initially it's more physical. The earlier you are in your playing career, the more you're trying to get your body physically ready and also get in the right position, work on your technique, work on the muscle memory. So it started out much more physical, and then especially after those misses are always mental, getting back to be able to hit it like you can. But I would say it was a mix, and the closer I got to my senior year, the more and more it became more of a mental exercise than anything. And I wish I could say all the external feedback was positive, helping me get over those misses, but I have to say not every coach is as positive as they necessarily should be. Yeah. So it's even not just dealing with the miss yourself, which is absolutely devastating, but dealing with a lot of negative external feedback and be able to just filter that out and say, okay, I know I can do this. I know I can make it. And sometimes it's just like, you aren't going to be positive all the time. Like sometimes it's hard to trick yourself. You just have to push through those times where it feels absolutely horrible. Where you're like, I just wish I could dig a hole in the ground and just crawl in it and never come out. But somehow it works out in the end. Somehow you get 10 years later and you don't even remember the miss.
Yeah, I was going to say 333 points later. You don't remember the miss either. So I got to ask this too, just because I'm curious. So drafted 7th round, 251st pick by the Bills. Take me through that experience. Sitting at home with your friends, were you out and about? What was that like draft night?
Yeah, it was unreal. So that was the day that I was graduating. So I had my graduation that day.
No kidding.
All my family was in town watching me graduate. At that point, I had a few calls from teams that were talking to me about free agency, about signing after the draft was done. And so that's what was in my mind. I was like, okay, I'll probably have a free agent contract after the draft's over. We're just watching it just for fun. And all of a sudden I get a call from the Bills. It's the GM from the Bills. I'm like, hello? He's like, hey, John, how would you like to come play for the Bills? I was like, yes, I would. Well, great, because we're about to draft you. And all of a sudden I hear this eruption from downstairs as my name scrolls across the TV. And from that point on, the rest of the day, I was just basically in shock.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was. That pick was second or third to the last pick. So it was just, it was unexpected. And yeah, a lot of luck, I have to say.
Yeah, I'm sure you were sky high as you could possibly be. You finally got your diploma, which you graduated, as I mentioned earlier, summa cum laude too. And you got, that day doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I'll throw one other in there, not to brag, but I have to throw it in there because this was probably my most proud accomplishment in college, is that I earned first team academic All-American.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I had been working towards basically since I was a freshman. Like every year trying to get as good of a GPA as possible because there was this wall of athletes who were academic All-American. I was like, I want to make it on that wall. Yep. And so to finally do that my senior year, I was, just super, super proud of that. Because it's, balancing academics and football and some of the like clubs and stuff I was a part of. I look back at those days and like, how can I still do that?
Right?
Yeah.
That's unbelievable. And, as I mentioned to you at the beginning of the show, that summa cum laude jumps out, 333 point. That stuff's all awesome. But the fact that you're able to do what you're doing, especially now after football life, I should say, is incredible. But just sticking on education and what you did entering the league, can you see? And the reason I bring this up, we talked to Coach Grayvold, who was on our last podcast after the show, and I wish we got it on the show, but he was mentioning how smart NFL athletes have to be. It's not like they're just most athletic, they plug into a system and everyone makes it, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the education of an NFL athlete, even from a kicker standpoint? Some people might think, oh, he's just out there kicking a football. I'm sure you got to put it exact spot. You got to have a little bit of football IQ. It's not just get out there and kick a football.
Yeah, it definitely applies, I would say, a lot more to positions other than special teams. But as I said, it's all about the mental game. So the difference in your mental fortitude, the difference between the not making a team and being that team and being consistent every time, which at the NFL level means making almost every one of your field goals. Yep. You just mentally really have to be super, super strong. So that's a huge challenge, and it takes a lot of training outside of just physical training. It's a lot of mental training, and a lot of things that you don't necessarily see early on in high school or college. Whether it's yoga or visualizations or various brain training that's coming out these days. There's a lot that NFL players do that to get their mind ready that you don't do in earlier, at least they don't do now, but probably should in the earlier stages of development.
John, you had a chance to play with a handful of different NFL teams. How important was it that whenever you joined a team, building that bond with the long snapper and the holder? How close of a unit were you guys, or was it just one of those things like, hey, we're all professionals here, let's just show up and do our job? Yeah,
you'd think because people bounce around so much in the NFL that everyone would kind of be really like for themselves, all about me. But what I was lucky to find is that all these NFL players are very, very gracious and professional, and even the kickers that you go and you're competing with them for their job, they're all super friendly and are really, they understand that if you aren't competing with each other, you're a team. And although you are competing, especially with kickers, you're really more so competing with yourself. So from what I've seen, all the snappers that I worked with, all the punters, like you spend a lot of time together, so you get really close, end up spending time outside of the field. So yeah, it's cool to see, to be in these locker rooms and see how friendly everybody is. Even the big name guys who come over and say hi, even though you're a rookie who probably shouldn't be talking to anybody, but yeah.
And John, one last question for you. I have to ask because Madden 2019 just released their ratings for all the players. In your heyday, what do you think your Madden rating should have been at kicker?
Yeah, I would say power 99, accuracy like 82 probably. Yeah.
Fair enough.
So what we're going to do now is we started this, was it last episode? Yeah, Steve's first episode. So Steve's going to walk you through what we call the Gauntlet. He's going to ask you a bunch of questions, this or that style. And just first thing that comes off the top of your head, just let it rip, okay?
Perfect.
Hope you have a spare helmet there. Get your chin strap ready. All right, John. So if you could only have one, number one offense, number one defense.
Offense.
All right. 3-4 or 4-3?
3-4.
It's third and medium. Are we running or are we passing?
We're kicking the field goal.
Love it.
Kick on third, kick on fourth. We'll kick on every down.
Love it.
Spread or power offense?
Spread.
All right. And last but not least, players or scheme? What's more important?
Let's go players.
Players.
All right.
That's the common theme. That's the common theme with everyone. I love it. Coach Grable mentioned on the last episode, it was players because if you have freshmen against seniors, they won't match up properly. Can you explain why you chose players? Is it more of just athletes make the scheme, or?
I would say more so because I haven't really been in the coaching space yet.
Yep.
So I just kind of went with my gut, but it is, yeah. It's definitely it's a good question.
It is. It's because you start thinking, well, players. Then you think, well, scheme, and then you start to run over 1,000 scenarios in your head. Well, Bill Belichick, and then
Yeah.
That's why we always ask it last. John, can you talk a little bit about life after the game? Whether you are a former NFL player, you play overseas in Germany or any country. How have you adapted to life after the game? And give a couple shout outs to what you're doing now and, just the general life after the fame and in the NFL.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's thinking about what you're going to do after you're done playing is important at any level. Whether you're in high school, thinking about playing in college, sometimes the scholarship works out, sometimes it doesn't. So you have to know what's next. Where am I going to go to college? What I'm going to do after high school? College, same thing. Like the NFL is definitely a long shot. So throughout there, just always be thinking about where you want to go. What do you want to do? If football or your sport wasn't an option, what would you do? Because at any point you could get injured even if you have the talent. And so for me, it's always been the startup world. I've loved startups, love companies. I like disruption and innovation. So that's something I've always been drawn to. Over the years, taught myself how to be a web developer, how to code, which has really opened up a lot of cool things for me. So turned that and recently been working on a few startups. One, as you mentioned earlier, was an app for discovering sports camps. Another one was a community for innovators in the sports tech space, people who are creating startups, creating technology, like yourself.
Victory is a proud member of Starters. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So both of those are really combining my passion with startups and technology and how they can improve the world with my background in sports and a lot of the issues I saw, one as an athlete and then two, trying to build a company in the sports space.
Awesome. You can find John Potter at John M. Potter on Twitter. John, thanks again for taking the time to jump on this podcast with us. I hope those listening got some valuable feedback from what your experience with it and the few short years that you've been out of the game. So once again, I'm Chris Haddad, co-host Steve McGrath. Follow John Potter on Twitter, and I'm sure I'll be happy to talk sports, tech, startups, kicking, anything you name it. So,
yep,
John, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks
John.
a lot for having me.